I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about this Williams drop target assembly. I'm shopping out this time warp, and this drop target assembly was terrible. Definitely needed completely taken apart and cleaned and fixed up. So these are a real big pain in the butt. The design of them is a big pain in the butt. So one of the problems was actually removing this from the game so that you could give it a good deep cleaning. And what I had to do was, first I removed this switch, the two screws that hold the switch on. Then I went ahead and took all the screws out of this bracket so that the bracket would come down. Now, of course, you got all these wires here, so I want to be able to completely remove this for cleaning and service. So I started removing these components one at a time. So the coil stop is only 2 screws. Take it off, and now you can pull the coil out of the equation and get it out of your way. That gives you a little bit more playroom now for this. Then I went ahead and took out all the screws out of these contact boards out of the back, and that pretty much frees up your whole assembly. So with this assembly off, pretty much you're going to remove all these plates, all these screws, everything. This piston here, I take like a triple aught steel wool and I rub that down. I make sure that it's polished really well. And I'll take, you got to be careful with the steel wool though, because it does leave little fibers, it leaves little hairs. So if you're going to use that, you got to make sure that you clean that really well. So I spray it down with alcohol and I clean these down with a rag really well. And then each one of these target assemblies I took out and I cleaned these hardcore too. You got to get in there with a Q-tip. I had to replace the decals. Chances are, if you're shopping out one of these games, you're going to be replacing these decals anyway. They're not that expensive, and it really makes it look so much better. Mine actually were causing a problem. They were peeling up. It had some kind of a paper backing. What a nightmare it was to get that clean again so that I could put a new sticker on here and make sure that it was going to adhere. And all the plastic parts in the back of here, after I gave it a good cleaning with the alcohol, I had to get in there with Q-tips and everything. Then I took some Novus 2 with a Q-tip, and I went in here and I polished all these, especially anything where it actually comes in contact with this drop target assembly, because you want this to be really snappy, and you don't want any friction on here, or you want to limit the amount of friction on here. So that Novus 2 really polishes it up, gives it a smooth surface as it touches when it comes down. So that worked really nice. All right, now on the back here, you got these horseshoe contact points. These kind of remind me of like an old school EM machine, and so I'm treating it like that. Like on this side, it has these contact boards. So these are like little wipers, little fingers that ride up and down the board making contact. So the issue with it is of course, you know, it builds up dirt and grime, and you lose contact there. So I'll take a little bit of sandpaper, like a 300 or finer, and just barely flick the edge. I'm not trying to remove any material, I'm just trying to make it shiny, just trying to shine it up, remove the oxidation, the dirt, the debris, and then I clean it really good with alcohol. That's pretty much all I do with those. Now on the contact boards, this is a different story. So these traces are very delicate, they've already been worn down, so I do not want to get in there with sandpaper. That's going to be way too aggressive. So what I did is I started with alcohol and little cotton balls and Q-tips, and I cleaned these as best as I could. Then I took a magic eraser with a little dab of alcohol, and I gently kind of cleaned it, and that does shine it up. It does a really good job. Just being careful not to remove any of the trace material, and then finish it up with like a little dry cotton ball to make sure it's nice and dry. So this next step is a little bit controversial. I learned from one of my friends that he was pretty good at EM machines, and he actually puts a little trace amount of a synthetic grease on here. I know a lot of people are completely anti-grease, anti-lubricant, anything, but hear me out here. I've started going on my EM machines, and it works great. And you got to be careful though not to put too much on, and that's the big problem. Everybody wants to goop it all on. It becomes this big sludge, right? And it attracts dirt and all that. So what I do is I like to use this Super Lube. It's a synthetic grease. and it's really nice. It doesn't seem to, you know, harden over the years. And I put just a dab on a Q-tip, and I'll apply it to the boards first. Then I will take a cotton ball and I basically just wipe it all off. So you think you're pretty much getting it all off, but you're really not. There's like, what you're left with is a super ultra thin layer. And what that does is that actually provides a little bit of lubricant to allow those fingers to glide down. It actually starts to protect your traces here. And it creates less friction, you know, so it's going to make your drop targets a little snappy. I mean, honestly, it's so thin of a layer that you wouldn't even know what's on there, really. So it is, I use a very, very thin layer, and it's worked for me. You could choose to use them dry. I know a lot of people do, but that's just how I do it, and I've had good results with it. Also, while you got this out, make sure that you clean these contact points here on your switch. And then, now we've got this all cleaned up and pretty much ready to put back together. And I did replace the coil sleeve. If you're going to tear all this apart, you might as well get a fresh coil sleeve and put in here. I like to do coil sleeves in the entire game. I really think it makes all your coils a lot more snappy. They perform better, and when you pull these out, you'll see they're just gross. You know, it takes more time to clean them. They're not that expensive. You might as well just pop a new one in. So we put the new coil sleeve in there, and now I'm just going to reassemble this in reverse order. So I'm going to start with putting the coil in here, the coil stop, screwing that in, and then I will flip it over here, put all these contact boards back in with screws, and then I'm just going to gently put everything in place, put a couple screws to hold it in, then I can kind of finish it up and make sure that everything is perfect, the alignment's good, the switch is in there correctly, and I feel like that's the easiest way to do this drop target assembly. The other thing I wanted to make a quick note about is these contact boards. Like mine, when, I don't know, maybe I did it as I was trying to take these off, because there's a lot of wires on here and it's a little bit delicate. So one of these diodes basically just like fell right off the contact point. And then I went to move it back on. I was going to resolder it, and the other end just broke right off. So I just went ahead and put a brand new diode in here. But because of that, like, I want to make sure I went over the whole board and I kind of wiggled the wire a little bit, make sure it's making a good contact. I did have to reflow solder on a couple of these that didn't look the best. But overall, you definitely want to inspect those before you put it back on. You want to put it all the way back together and then realize you have an issue there. This game has a very interesting issue with the drop target assembly. Every single drop target registers. It scores, you hear the sound effect, but when you knock down every single one, it doesn't reset right away. However, at the end of the ball, it resets just fine. So the coil's working, every switch is registering, so why is it not resetting? We're going to dive into this right now. Most likely, your problem is down here with these wires. You can see I just barely touched this one. It just broke right off. So what I'm going to do is actually desolder every single one of these. And if the wire is really bad like this one, I'm just going to strip new wire and resolder it on there. And in some cases, I just replaced a couple of them because the wires themselves were just so bad, and it looks like they've been shortened before. So I'm pretty much just going to make sure every single solder joint is good on this board. This is what the drop target assembly looks like after the repair. I had to replace most of the wires on there. They were just so brittle. Okay, after the wire repair, we're going to try it out. And it resets. So that whole issue was basically those really bad wires and solder joints.